My name is Serena, and at 27 years old, I recently got married back home. Growing up, my father and brother subjected my mother and me to harsh treatment. We were treated more like servants than family. Any command from my father or brother had to be obeyed immediately. Any delay resulted in harsh scolding. This treatment began in my early childhood. "Hurry up. Why are you so slow?" was a constant refrain. Even a child in elementary school could do better than you. My father would berate. "Women are worthless," he declared, silencing any protest with a sharp "shut up." My chores began from preschool age, but the demands intensified when I started elementary school. While my father and brother lounged, my mother and I were kept constantly busy. Whenever they desired something, whether a drink or ice cream in the depths of winter, we were expected to fetch it immediately, regardless of the inconvenience. As a result, my mother and I were perpetually exhausted. She often wept, apologizing to me. "I'm sorry, Serena. It's because I'm weak that they treat you like this." "No, Mom," I reassured her. "Someday, I'll leave this house. I'll stand on my own feet and escape from Dad and brother." Concerned, I asked, "But what about you, Mom?" Her reply was simple yet resolute. "As long as you're happy, Serena, I'll be fine." When I reached 10th grade, thoughts of attending college began to occupy my mind. However, my father firmly believed that women did not need higher education. His traditional mindset dictated that a high school diploma was sufficient for a woman. Despite this, I was enrolled in a college preparatory program, and all my friends were making plans for university. I had a passion for learning and was determined to pursue higher education. Initially, my father opposed the idea, but my mother intervened. "She excels in her studies. That's why I support her going to college," she asserted. This sparked a confrontation. "Are you challenging me? I've said it countless times, women don't need education." My father retorted, "What good will it do when all she'll do is cook after marriage?" My mother stood firm, countering, "Education is never wasted. It will prove useful even after marriage and children." Reluctantly, my father agreed, but refused to finance my tuition. Undeterred, my mother used her savings to support my college aspirations. I was accepted into my first choice university, a private institution. Grateful yet burdened by the expense, I embarked on my college journey, which ultimately led me to meet my husband. I had always harbored a fear of men, but he changed that for me. He was remarkably kind. Our paths crossed at our college club, where his cheerful demeanor and knack for making others laugh stood out. Having grown up under the shadow of my father and brother for the first time, I found myself feeling positively towards a man. I began to entertain the idea of dating someone like him, though I kept my feelings hidden and couldn't muster the courage to confess. As a result, we never dated during our college years. It wasn't until after graduation that we met again at a reunion. He had transformed into a sophisticated city man, a stark contrast to my rural upbringing and New York family home. During my university years, I had lived independently in an apartment, and after graduating, I found myself working in Manhattan, where I was known simply as Plain Jane at my company. I wasn't sure if someone as plain as me was suitable for him, but when he asked me to visit, I couldn't refuse. We reminisced about our club days and soon started dating. A year and a half later, he proposed formally, and we got married. As we started our own family, I began to worry about my mother back at my childhood home. The thought of her enduring continued abuse from my father and brother made me feel ill. "Hi, Mom. How have you been?" I asked cautiously. "I'm fine. But how about you, Serena?" she replied gently. "I'm doing well. Danny helps a lot around the house, and he might even be a better cook than me." "Really? Perhaps he takes after his father, the chef." "Could be. But please don't worry about me, Mom. And make sure to take care of yourself too, dear." "I will, Mom." Her words were kind as always, but I sensed something troubling beneath the surface. I had a gut feeling that she was still suffering from my father and brother's mistreatment. They harbored a deep-seated disdain for women, but my mother, with her scared face, bore the brunt of their cruelty. Before I was born, my mother had an accident that left a prominent scar on the right side of her face. My father would cruelly call it hideous and disgusting, so she always kept that side of her face covered with her hair. It was heartbreaking to see my mother, who had been injured defending my father, being insulted in such a way. It became evident that my father didn't appreciate her at all. Even my brother joined in, saying heartless things like, "Don't come to the open house. You're disgusting." I believed that such words should never be spoken, especially within a family. One sweltering midsummer day, my husband and I were enjoying a pleasant evening with chilled beer and snacks. Suddenly, the doorbell rang just before 9 p.m., leaving us wondering who could be calling at such a late hour. As we opened the door, there stood my mother. "Oh, Danny, Mom, what brings you here at this hour?" I asked, surprised. "Could you lend me $20? I'm sorry for bothering you, Serena and Danny," she replied softly. $20 is fine, but what happened?" I inquired, concerned. "I thought I'd go to a motel or something," she murmured. "A motel? What do you mean?" I pressed gently. "Right now, all I need is a place to sleep," she explained wearily. "What? Why? Did something happen?" I asked, growing increasingly alarmed. "They kicked me out of the house, your father and his lot. I have no money," she confessed. I froze in shock, unable to comprehend. As I urged her to share more, the details she revealed were beyond horrifying. That evening after dinner, Mom was busy with her usual housework when Dad and brother began demanding more alcohol and ice cream. Mom left with only her coin purse and smartphone to get what they wanted. However, when she returned, she found the door locked from the inside. "Unlock the door. I brought everything," Mom pleaded. "Just leave it there. We don't need you anymore," Dad's harsh voice replied. "Drop what you bought and disappear. Worthless wife," brother added cruelly. This left Mom utterly distraught. She had spent almost all her money and couldn't even afford a taxi, forcing her to walk all the way back home. "That's what happened." "That's terrible. Maybe you're just useless now," Mom lamented. "Serena, let's have your mother live with us," my husband suddenly suggested. "Really? Are you sure?" I asked in surprise. "Yeah, we have extra rooms. She can have one," he assured me. "But I don't want to intrude on your newlywed life," Mom protested. "It's okay. I see you as my own mother," my husband insisted warmly. "Thank you," Mom exclaimed tearfully. She must have been deeply moved by his kindness, something she likely wasn't used to experiencing. My husband had lost his mother young and was raised by his hard-working chef father. He had earned a college scholarship and understood the pain of others. Having such a husband, I came to realize how fortunate I was. He was the complete opposite of my father and brother. From then on, we began our life together as a trio. Whenever we returned home, Mom always had a hot meal waiting for us. "You don't have to go through all this trouble, Danny, and I can help with the housework," I offered. "It's okay. I want to do this." "Thank you, Mom," my husband insisted warmly. After a comforting home-cooked meal from Mom, I was feeling a bit guilty and relaxed when the doorbell suddenly rang. To my surprise, it was my father and older brother. "You're here after all. How could you send me a text like that? I don't want to be with you anymore." "What's that supposed to mean?" my father bellowed. "I simply told you how I feel," Mom retorted calmly. "Oh, you're getting bold now. Since when did you start acting so high and mighty?" my father sneered. "You were the one who asked me to leave, right? So I'm suggesting we get a divorce?" Mom shrugged. "I don't need an old lady like you around, but if we're divorcing, you better pay me alimony," my father demanded. "Excuse me?" I was shocked to hear my father demanding alimony from my mother. I couldn't believe what was happening. "Isn't that young guy I saw with you your new boyfriend? That's cheating, isn't it?" my father accused. "No, it isn't," Mom responded firmly. "Oh, you two seem quite close though. We didn't do anything improper," my mother calmly clarified. I was taken aback. I had no idea my mother had been involved with a younger man. Panic set in. Was she really having an affair? If so, it would be detrimental to her since she and my father were not yet divorced. Concerned about potential legal repercussions if my father's accusations were true, I glanced at my mother. To my surprise, she winked at me, silently reassuring me that everything would be all right. "You despicable, disgraced woman. You won't survive alone once we divorce. Go ahead, pay me and live your pitiful life," my father scorned. "I'm fine with divorcing. I have a job," she asserted calmly. "What? A job? But you've always been a housewife." My father was dumbfounded, echoed by my brother's shocked expression. Neither my father nor my brother had any knowledge that my mother had been employed. She had kept it a secret from them. Confiding in me discreetly, she had explained that she wanted to avoid them becoming financially dependent on her. "Oh, I understand now. Let's start anew. Come back home," my father pleaded as soon as he learned about the situation with the money. But my mother's response was cold and resolute. "Why would I? I'm not coming back. I'm filing for divorce. What? Why? I'm offering to reconcile, my father exclaimed. Why do you speak down to me? I'm not the weak person I once was. I don't need a cheating man like you, my mother retorted firmly. The accusation of being the cheating man stunned my father. My brother, sitting nearby, was equally taken aback. Did you say something to my business partner, Emma? My mother questioned. Well, he's seeing a woman younger than Sabrina. It's disturbing, downright disgusting, my brother interjected. No, you've misunderstood. It's not what you think, my father protested vehemently. What's there to misunderstand? Can you deny this after seeing the photo? My mother confronted, displaying the picture she had discovered on her phone. It depicted my father in a close and intimate pose with a young woman named Emma, their faces almost touching. Seeing this, I couldn't help but feel disgusted by my father's actions. It was shocking to realize that this man was my father, behaving in such a despicable manner. How had my mother uncovered their relationship with Emma? It was through one of her business connections. During a face-to-face meeting at a cafe, my mother had noticed a ring on Emma's finger, one that bore a striking resemblance to a ring she had purchased years ago. Impressed, my mother had complimented Emma on her ring. Emma had responded, "Thank you. My boyfriend, an older man, gave it to me. It's secondhand, but I cherish it because of its value." This revelation fueled my mother's suspicion that my father had given Emma the ring. It was a unique diamond and emerald piece, custom-made just for her, making its disappearance from her jewelry box all the more damning. Convinced of my father's infidelity, she made her intentions clear. "I'll be seeking compensation for this affair, and we're getting a divorce," she declared. "What? Who's going to take care of all the housework then?" My father protested. "Really? You and your son can manage, can't you?" I interjected, knowing well their incompetence in domestic tasks. They had always relied on us women to handle everything, so they would undoubtedly struggle if my mother left. It made me question why they had driven her away in the first place. That's when I resolved to intervene. "Why would you chase Mom away if you can't manage without her?" I demanded. "It was just to hurt that woman. I wanted her to suffer. I'm not the villain here," my father defended himself. "You're still saying that. You're the one who cheated. You're despicable and disgusting," I retorted, finding a newfound strength to confront my father and brother. In the past, I hadn't been able to stand up to them, but now, with the support of my husband and seeing my mother's resilience, I felt empowered to protect my family. Meanwhile, my brother was in tears, unsure of what to do next. It became apparent that he couldn't even cook a basic meal. His culinary skills were limited to bacon and eggs and salads. I questioned if those even qualified as cooking. If they were so incapable in the kitchen, perhaps living on instant ramen for the rest of their lives would suffice. My mother wasn't a servant or a housekeeper. Why should she return home cheerfully after being betrayed? It was clear my father and brother were not thinking straight. They couldn't even hold a coherent conversation. "Well then, since you've made your decision, we need to prepare. I'll find a good lawyer," my father declared. "Hold on, I don't care anymore. I'm definitely getting a divorce. Whether through mediation or a trial, it doesn't matter. I've endured emotional distress because of you, and I might be entitled to significant compensation," my mother asserted firmly. "No way, I won't allow it," my brother smirked arrogantly. "Even if we divorce, the parent-child relationship won't end," he retorted. "So, I'll still inherit when you're gone." "That's not happening. I'm cutting you out of my will. After the way you've treated me, I won't let someone like you inherit anything. Did you know that by specifying my will, I can prevent you from receiving any of my assets?" My brother's eyes widened in shock. He had never considered that his hurtful behavior could lead to such consequences. His outcry echoed loudly through our apartment complex. A burly man from the neighboring apartment, whom we usually avoided, emerged due to the commotion. He scolded my father and brother, who quickly fled as if fleeing for their lives. After my mother divorced my father, it was a difficult battle, but she secured substantial compensation. She completely cut ties with Emma, my father's mistress. My father appeared devastated, and my brother, realizing he wouldn't inherit anything, fell into a deep gloom. My father's career suffered, and he was gradually demoted to less significant roles before eventually choosing to resign. Meanwhile, my brother, working as a freelancer, struggled to make ends meet on his own. He reached out to me for help, but I ignored his calls and messages, cutting off contact. Following the divorce, my mother moved to a different apartment, feeling it best to create some distance from us. While my husband felt a sense of loneliness, I believed the separation might be beneficial. Even now, the three of us occasionally gather for dinner, which is truly enjoyable. However, soon we will become a family of 4, as I am pregnant. I have no intention of allowing my child to meet their grandfather. I cannot bear the thought of such a despicable man being near my child. From now on, I am determined to become a stronger woman for the sake of my husband, my mother, and my child. My name is Rachel, a 30-year-old employed at a foreign investment firm. I tied the knot with Kevin, my husband, 2 years ago. He serves as a civil servant, though his employment is on a yearly contract basis, causing him annual apprehension over contract renewals. Kevin's family staunchly champions the merits of public service. With retired county workers as parents and a sister currently employed in the city office, their allegiance to public service is unwavering. Consequently, there's a noticeable air of disdain towards my private sector occupation. Living under the same roof since our marriage, they seize every opportunity to diminish the significance of my profession. Isn't it embarrassing to work for a foreign company as an American, especially in finance? Isn't that just about chasing profits? People in private sectors are perceived as those who couldn't secure public service roles, and those in foreign companies are seen as settling because they couldn't land a domestic job. It's a pity, they often remark. It appears that my husband, who was raised in such an environment, also holds public service in high esteem, despite the instability of his position and its modest salary. He remains steadfast in his attachment to this precarious job. Once, during his annual bout of anxiety around fiscal year-end, I ventured to ask Kevin, "Wouldn't you feel more secure with a stable full-time position in a regular company rather than remaining a part-time employee in public service?" His response was resolute. "I'd rather face unemployment than venture into the private sector." Kevin hasn't disclosed his part-time status to his parents, insisting that I maintain the secret as well. Despite lacking a substantial role, he fabricates tales of promotions to uphold his pride. I don't believe he needs to fabricate such stories, but it seems he's striving to earn respect in the eyes of his parents and younger sister by portraying a certain status. Despite never showing me his payslip, the amount deposited into our account suggests his salary is rather modest. With Kevin's recent promotion to section chief, one would expect a significant salary increase, right? How much is he earning now? Caught off guard, Kevin accidentally divulged my salary. However, instead of the anticipated reaction, his father seemed taken aback, questioning, "Is that the standard income nowadays?" While I'm uncertain of the exact salary of a public sector chief, I do know that as a bond trader, my earnings are considerably higher. A notable portion of my earnings comes from commissions. Lately, my performance has been consistently strong, resulting in a salary far surpassing the norm. Upon learning the figures, my husband remarked, while his mother nodded in agreement, "Times have changed, but it's clear Kevin is highly regarded." She seemed visibly pleased. Kevin's sister, employed at the city office, joined the conversation, asserting, "You see, working at the county office guarantees higher earnings for my brother. He might even hold a department head position if he were in the city office." Kevin's discomfort was palpable after inadvertently revealing my salary. Realizing his mistake, he quickly tried to steer the conversation in a different direction. "Oh, by the way, I saw someone from the housing manufacturer around here the other day. Are we planning to remodel the house?" he asked. Indeed, a salesperson from a housing company had recently visited to assist us. Seizing the opportunity to divert the conversation, I suggested, "If we are considering a renovation, I'd recommend focusing on the kitchen." Before I could finish, my mother-in-law cut me off sharply. "No, as the daughter-in-law, you have no place in family discussions. Just keep quiet and follow instructions." It seemed my intimidating mother-in-law disliked everything I did or said, primarily because I wasn't a civil servant. She also resented that I received all of Kevin's salary and gave him an allowance. Believing Kevin's claim that he earned a substantial income, she was convinced I was managing his finances. In reality, Kevin's modest salary mostly funded his personal expenses, while I covered nearly all the household costs. My sister-in-law didn't contribute to the living expenses at all. "Why would you take living expenses from us when we're living on a pension? Kevin is making so much, you don't need it," they would say, refusing to help. They didn't have to pay rent, and I could manage with my salary alone. But it felt unfair. Despite shouldering most of the financial burden, I wasn't allowed to participate in the home renovation discussion this time. So I retreated to the kitchen to clean up after dinner, promising myself that next time would be different. Neither my mother-in-law nor my sister-in-law helps with the housework, so I hurry home after work to cook, clean, and do laundry. In this respect, working for a foreign-owned company has its advantages. As long as I perform well, there's no need for overtime, allowing me to always leave on time and keep my work and private life separate. Kevin, on the other hand, often brings his work home and spends his days off on his computer. I worry about the security of bringing work data home. When I asked him about it, he snapped, "I can't help it. I get yelled at if I work overtime and even more if I don't finish on time. It's not your concern, so don't butt in." His response was harsh, and he has been particularly grumpy lately, snapping at me whenever I try to talk to him. He even yelled at me when I brought up the housing issue he had been discussing with his parents. Just like Mom always said, it's none of your business. You just need to follow what's been decided. I was growing increasingly frustrated with Kevin's attitude. He never shared anything with me despite my bearing the burden of living expenses and housework. One day, a representative from the construction company came to my in-laws' house with a computer, discussing the layout and other aspects of the house with everyone except me. When I brought them tea and tried to sneak a peek, they immediately yelled, "You don't need to look, just go away." From my brief glance, I was surprised to see what appeared to be the floor plan of a new house, not a renovation of my in-laws' home. For some time, my father-in-law had mentioned that their house was getting cramped and that he wanted to rebuild it, but I hadn't thought he was serious. It seems my in-laws, both retired civil servants, received generous retirement allowances and are planning to build and live in a new house with that money. In addition to their retirement allowances, they haven't spent much of their pension either. Since marrying into the family, I assumed they had ample funds, so I tried to stay out of their financial decisions. However, one thing did bother me. Would Kevin's sister still be living with us in the new home? At 28, it might be time for her to get married, but there hasn't been any discussion about that. It seems highly likely she will continue living with us even after the move. This wouldn't be a problem if she helped with the housework, but she tends to dump all the chores on me and then complains about it, saying, "It's too troublesome." I wish my sister-in-law would get married soon, but recently I overheard my father-in-law discussing plans with the home builder. Can we add extra rooms so that when our daughter finds a husband, they can also live here? Ideally, we'd like a house where my wife and I, our son, our daughter, and her future husband can all live together, he said. I was shocked to hear this, especially since it seemed they were planning for my sister-in-law to live with us even after she marries. I can only imagine how large a house for 3 families would need to be, and it probably wouldn't fit on their current property. Considering that the new house would be built with my in-laws' retirement fund and my sister-in-law's earnings, I have no right to complain. Still, I can't help but think about how much of a hassle it will be to clean such a large house. Then, my husband and his family decided to visit the showcase room and construction site, telling me to stay home because it's none of your business. My mother-in-law shouted at me with a nasty grin, clearly expecting a retort. She looked annoyed when I remained quiet. The construction of the new home proceeded without any information being shared with me, and my in-laws and sister-in-law started preparing to move out. My husband didn't seem to be preparing anything, so I asked, "Don't you need to be getting ready to move?" "Why would I do it? That's your job," my husband snapped back at me. I was taken aback since he hadn't even told me when and where we were moving. From then on, I started preparing for the move whenever I had time, but I made sure to separate my husband's things from mine. The whole new home move-out incident had completely shattered my trust in my husband, and I could no longer bear my mother-in-law's terrible attitude. Even when I asked my husband about our new address, he simply replied, "You don't need to know. Just be prepared." From snippets of conversation during meals, I gathered that the move was imminent, but it was strange that they kept me, the wife, completely in the dark. Perhaps they thought of me as nothing more than a maid. One day, the moving service arrived, and that was when I finally learned we were moving. As I hurriedly cleaned up the breakfast dishes, my mother-in-law remarked, "We're buying new ones, so you can leave those. And are you planning to move into our new home with us?" In that moment, it became clear. They hadn't told me about their new home or the moving date because they intended to kick me out. As I saw my husband standing silently behind my mother-in-law, a smirk playing on his lips, I couldn't help but wonder if he shared her intentions. Well, I had anticipated something like this, so I had already packed my belongings separately, without a trace of agitation. I met her gaze squarely. I despise everything about you. From now on, we're going to live as a family without you. Do whatever you want. My mother-in-law shouted at me, her tone filled with disdain. My sister-in-law watched with indifference, perhaps expecting me to break down and beg to stay. My mother-in-law's displeasure deepened at my lack of reaction. You're a parasite, leeching off Kevin's paycheck since the day you got married. Get out now. We need Kevin's salary to pay off the mortgage on our new home, she spat out, her words sharp with resentment. Parasites like you are a nuisance, she seethed, her anger palpable as her face flushed red. While I had already planned on leaving, the revelation about my husband's salary being used for repayment almost made me burst out laughing. My husband appeared shocked, unaware of this arrangement. He gazed at his mother, then downcast, unable to speak the truth. His reaction revealed that my in-laws intended to rely solely on Kevin, whom they perceived as a high earner, to handle the mortgage repayments without tapping into their retirement funds. The prospect of how they would manage the mortgage repayments intrigued me. With a smile, I responded, "Understood. I will divorce Kevin, and you can all move to your new place by yourselves," I declared calmly. My mother-in-law, clearly displeased with my composed demeanor, appeared as though she wanted to say more, but she was ushered out of the house by my father-in-law and sister-in-law. Turning to Kevin, who remained behind, I said, "I'll bring the divorce papers, so give me the address of your new place. I have no idea what your magnificent new home looks like, so I would like to see it once." Reluctantly, he provided me with the address. With little luggage remaining, I cheerfully arranged for a friend to help me move out using her car. I made sure to switch all the bills to be under Kevin's name rather than mine, utilities and everything included. Returning to my parents' house for the time being, I decided to head to the address Kevin had given me to have him sign the divorce papers. Their new house was strikingly large, designed to accommodate 3 generations, with its grand architecture looming impressively. Upon spotting me, my mother-in-law hurried over, shouting, "What are you doing here, you parasitic wife?" Ignoring her tirade, I calmly asked Kevin to sign the divorce papers. Reluctantly, he complied, while his mother continued her verbal assault. "I knew it. A non-civil servant wife is useless. Hurry up and sign, and send her away," she insisted. I couldn't resist a retort. Such a splendid new house. The payments must be quite the burden, aren't they? Can Kevin's salary cover it? I remarked snidely, watching as she read the papers, her anger palpable. "I don't need your concern. Take the divorce papers and leave immediately," she snapped once again. I lingered for a moment, observing my ex-husband's pale expression, but with his mother on the brink of eruption, I swiftly retrieved the divorce papers and filed them at City Hall before embarking on my search for a new home. After all that transpired, the thought of marriage lost its allure, so I opted for a cozy studio apartment to relish living independently. There was a charming spot conveniently close to my workplace, so I wasted no time in making the move. In my new abode, devoid of anyone foisting chores upon me or boasting about civil service, life took on a tranquil hue. Just as I was settling into this newfound peace, an unknown number lit up my phone screen. "Rachel, can you come back to me? I can't keep up with the mortgage payments, let alone the utilities. My phone lines have been cut off, and I'm borrowing my friend's phone to call you." It was none other than my ex-husband, Kevin. Through tears, he pleaded for help, but I couldn't help but feel exasperated. Instead of turning to me, he should have sought assistance from his parents or his sister. So I responded acidly, "Why not ask your sister, who's employed in public service, for support? And what about your parents? Surely they have their retirement savings and Social Security." Kevin's discomfort was evident as he confessed, "Actually, my parents have depleted their retirement savings, and my sister is grappling with her own financial troubles." It turned out that Kevin's parents had fallen prey to an investment scam, losing a significant portion of their retirement funds. Meanwhile, Kevin's sister, under the impression that she didn't need to aid her parents financially, had been recklessly accumulating debt through excessive spending on credit. Upon learning of my occupation in investments, my mother-in-law's demeanor turned openly hostile. Now, I wonder if her animosity stemmed from being swindled in an investment scam. Furthermore, It seems they were keen on upholding their social standing through ostentatious purchases, perhaps to preserve their pride in their public service careers. However, despite their efforts, Kevin's parents found themselves burdened with debt, relying on their Social Security checks to meet their obligations. I was taken aback to discover that Kevin's sister, despite her youth, had amassed significant debt by indulging in purchases of branded goods on credit. The situation took a further downturn when Kevin revealed, "Actually, I've been let go. I'm unemployed now." He had lost his job this year after being caught working remotely with data he had taken from the office. He should have heeded my warning, but it's hardly surprising considering he was taking confidential data out of the office. Even before Kevin lost his job, his family was already grappling with financial difficulties, reliant on my income. Kevin never disclosed to his parents that he was only a part-timer. Likewise, his parents concealed the loss of their retirement funds due to a scam, and even his younger sister kept her substantial debt hidden. In their public service-oriented family, filled with pride, everyone harbored deep secrets that somehow remained hidden as long as I was around. However, after they moved to their new home and I departed, their financial struggles came to light. As a last resort, Kevin reached out to me, seeking assistance. However, I had no desire to reconcile with him, so I firmly declined and ended the call. Despite my refusal, he persisted with repeated calls but eventually ceased after I continued to ignore him. Sometime later, as I passed by their new house, I noticed a for sale sign. Upon speaking with a home builder present at the site, I learned that they were struggling to meet their mortgage payments and had to sell the property quickly. However, they still had outstanding debts. It was ironic considering how they had previously boasted about their financial stability. Yet, when faced with financial difficulties, they swiftly sold their home, placing a burden on a relative who had co-signed the loan. According to the builder, this relative worked in the private sector, exacerbating the family's embarrassment as they were now ostracized by their relatives. Their previous claims of being public servants no longer held weight, and they were looked down upon by their community. Sitting comfortably at home, I couldn't help but smirk at the thought of how the once proud family, now isolated by their relatives and unable to flaunt their public service jobs, were faring. I'm sorry to hear that. Here's a rewritten version. In the midst of our wedding ceremony, a shocking disruption shattered the serene atmosphere. My mother-in-law, with an air of audacity, seized the microphone from my father-in-law mid-speech. Her words cut through the air like a blade. I apologized for my daughter's lack of beauty. The guests shifted uncomfortably as her declaration hung in the air, a bitter contrast to the joyous occasion. I glanced at my husband, hoping for support, only to be met with a chilling smirk. My senses reeled as I struggled to comprehend the sudden turn of events. A voice, firm and resolute, broke the stunned silence. An older gentleman rose from his seat, his actions commanding attention. "Is that all?" he demanded, his gaze piercing. Without waiting for an answer, he approached me with purpose. Recognizing him, my husband's expression betrayed a mix of surprise and fear. Before I could gather my thoughts, the man took my arm and ushered me away from the chaos. "Let's leave," he said gently, leading me through the corridors, away from the unwanted spectacle of our wedding day. A whirlwind of thoughts swept through my mind, painting a vivid picture of my life. My name is Angela, a 35-year-old woman shaped by the tumultuous currents of my past. Raised in a single-parent household after my parents divorced during my elementary school years, I became intimately acquainted with resilience and responsibility from a tender age. In my 20s, life took an unexpected turn when my mother fell ill, requiring my devoted care. Days melded into nights as I juggled the demands of work and the duties of a caregiver, my world revolving around her needs. Despite the challenges, I persevered, driven by love and duty. As the years passed, still unmarried in my 30s, fate intervened in the form of Stephen. A chance encounter at my office, where I manned the reception desk, blossomed into something more profound. Stephen, a man of kindness and understanding, saw beyond the complexities of my life and extended a hand of love. His proposal, offered despite the weight of my caregiving responsibilities, stirred a maelstrom of emotions within me. Could I dare to embrace happiness while tethered to the obligations of my past? Dope gnawed at my resolve, a relentless companion in the journey of love. Yet Stephen's unwavering support shattered the walls of my uncertainty. With tender words, he laid bare his heart, offering not just a partnership, but a promise of inclusion. "Let us be a family of 3, he proposed, a beacon of light in the darkness of my doubts. Moved by his heartfelt proposal, I made the decision to marry Stephen. However, when we shared the news with our parents, the reactions couldn't have been more contrasting. While my mother overflowed with joy, Stephen's mother, whom we'll call Ruth, responded with cutting disdain. During our first visit to Steve's home as an engaged couple, Ruth's words pierced the air like arrows. "I must be frank, I don't consider a woman from a single-parent family suitable for my son," she declared, her tone laced with contempt. As we embarked on wedding preparations, Ruth's hostility persisted, veiled in sarcasm and barbed remarks. Her comments, dripping with disdain, chipped away at my resolve. Despite her relentless jabs, I held my ground, refusing to allow her insults to go unchallenged. "I can endure your insults, but I won't tolerate you speaking ill of my mother," I asserted firmly, meeting her venomous words with unwavering strength. Yet Ruth's attacks only escalated, accusing me of using deceit to ensnare her son and casting unfounded aspersions on my family. Faced with her baseless accusations, I stood my ground, defending my honor and that of my loved ones. Though the road ahead seemed fraught with challenges, I refused to allow Ruth's bitterness to tarnish the love Stephen and I shared. With each attempt to assert myself, Ruth's venomous retorts intensified, leaving me feeling increasingly powerless. The thought of confiding in Steve crossed my mind, but I couldn't bear to burden him with unnecessary worries as we embarked on our journey into married life. Ruth's audacity reached new heights as she began to meddle in our wedding plans, even intruding upon the sacred ritual of selecting a wedding dress. Standing alongside my husband, she boldly declared her intent to choose the gown herself. Steve, oblivious to the tension, praised his mother's sense of style and eagerly supported her involvement. "I appreciate your gesture, but I want the freedom to choose a dress that resonates with me personally," I asserted gently, refusing to relinquish control over a decision so deeply personal. "I traveled all this way for you, only to be met with disappointment," my mother-in-law lamented, her words dripping with hurt. My husband's immediate defense of her, always swift to side with her, especially when she portrayed herself as the victim, stung deeply. Yet, when it came to the wedding dress, a symbol of my joy and individuality, I couldn't yield. "I understand, but I must choose my own dress. This moment is too important to compromise on," I affirmed resolutely, unwilling to sacrifice my vision for the sake of appeasing others. Despite her reluctance, my mother-in-law relented, though her resentment lingered. As the morning of the wedding dawned, her simmering animosity erupted into a shocking display of cruelty. "What a dreadful dress! And the veil? Tasteless," she scoffed upon encountering my chosen attire in the dressing room. Her words cut deep, a venomous attack on the culmination of my dreams. Despite my rising distress, I endeavored to maintain composure, determined to sidestep any turmoil on my special day. My mother, who adores sewing, crafted this veil with love. We selected the dress together, and I truly adore it, I explained evenly, hoping to diffuse the tension. But my attempt at peace was shattered as my mother-in-law's eyes widened with fury. In an instant, her calm facade crumbled, replaced by a storm of rage. With a sudden motion, she produced a can of coffee from her purse, unleashing its contents onto my beloved dress. Shock paralyzed me as the dark liquid stained the pristine fabric, rendering it unsalvageable. Desperation gripped me as I reached for a nearby towel, but my efforts proved futile against the irreversible damage. "This is the consequence of disobedience," she spat, her voice dripping with malice. With a final decree, she declared my attire unfit for the occasion, leaving me with no choice but to comply with her demands. As she exited the dressing room, her vindictive act hung heavy in the air, a bitter reminder of the power she wielded over my happiness. She must have deliberately brought the canned coffee, plotting to ruin my dress all along, evident from the fact that she had another dress prepared. Fueled by a mix of anger and frustration, I trembled with disbelief at her calculated cruelty. Seeking solace, I retreated to the separate waiting room where my husband awaited, tears streaming down my cheeks as I recounted the ordeal. "This is utterly unfair. It's going to cast a shadow over our entire wedding. What would you like me to do about it?" he snapped, his frustration palpable. Before I could finish, he cut me off, his voice rising in anger. His sudden outburst mirrored the venomous intensity of his mother's actions. Stunned by his abrupt shift in demeanor, I recoiled, taken aback by the harshness of his words. Yet just as swiftly as his anger erupted, it dissipated, replaced by a sense of remorse. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to lash out like that. I'm just feeling overwhelmed," he apologized, his agitation evident as he wiped beads of sweat from his brow. Despite his apology, a pang of guilt gnawed at me for burdening him with my troubles on such a momentous day. In an effort to diffuse the tension, I opted to lend an ear to my husband's concerns. "You seem really stressed. What's going on?" I inquired gently, hoping to offer some support. "It's a bit chaotic. The CEO of my company unexpectedly decided to attend our wedding. It's a long story, but basically he heard about our wedding from Steven's boss, who happened to meet him here at the hotel," my husband explained, his voice tinged with apprehension. "And to top it off, one of my colleagues fell ill last minute, so they invited the CEO to fill in." The coincidence was certainly striking, and I couldn't help but see the potential career implications. "It's quite the opportunity. Your skills might just earn you a promotion," I remarked, though I couldn't shake the feeling of frustration at his dismissive tone. Realizing the futility of arguing with him in his current state, I chose to withdraw from the conversation, allowing him to stew in his own thoughts. With the wedding ceremony underway, we exchanged vows atop the hotel's rooftop, the picturesque setting providing a serene backdrop to our union. As the moments passed without incident, a sense of relief washed over me, the earlier turmoil momentarily forgotten. However, the tranquility was short-lived, shattered by the impending family speeches at the reception. My mother-in-law's words cut through the air like a blade, leaving me seething with anger and indignation. Despite my father-in-law's attempts to intervene, she persisted, clutching the microphone tightly as she unleashed her vitriol for all to hear. Just as I reached my breaking point, a middle-aged man rose from his seat with determined resolve, striding purposefully towards me. "You don't deserve to endure this," he declared, his gaze fixed squarely on my mother-in-law. Without hesitation, he extended a guiding hand, leading me away from the escalating confrontation. My mother-in-law's outrage was palpable as she recoiled at the interruption to her tirade. However, her fury paled in comparison to the shock that rippled through the room as the man's identity was revealed. "Who dares to interrupt my speech?" she exclaimed, her indignation faltering as she realized the stature of the man before her. Beside her, Stephen's complexion drained of color as the truth dawned upon him. In a whirlwind of confusion, we hastily retreated from the reception hall, leaving the chaos behind. Sweating profusely and visibly flustered, Stephen struggled to regain his composure as we sought refuge in the relative privacy of the dressing room. "Why is my father here?" I gasped, the revelation sending shockwaves through my already tumultuous world. "That's correct. Stephen's company's CEO is also my biological father. The dissolution of my parents' marriage stemmed from irreconcilable differences. Their constant conflicts, exacerbated by their shared workplace, led them to part ways in the belief that it was for my well-being. Despite the divorce, they maintained sporadic contact over the years. I had grown accustomed to seeing my father several times a month, his consistent child support ensuring my needs were met as I transitioned into adulthood. Even when my mother fell ill, he remained a steadfast presence, offering support in various forms, fostering a strong bond between us. Yet the revelation of his position as Stephen's boss caught me off guard. "I never knew my father was the CEO of Stephen's company," I murmured, grappling with the unexpected twists of fate. His sudden appearance at my wedding, contrary to his prior commitment to a business engagement, only added to the bewildering turn of events. "Why did you come if you had an important meeting?" I questioned, perplexed by his change in plans. "My meeting concluded earlier than anticipated. I couldn't miss the opportunity to give you this gift in person," he explained, his presence offering a glimmer of solace amidst the chaos. As I made my way to the entrance, I encountered an employee who revealed an unexpected twist. My father was the boss Stephen had mentioned. Learning of the wedding through routine preparations for a gift, my father seized the chance to attend upon discovering the vacant seat due to a last-minute cancellation. "Why didn't you tell me?" I questioned, feeling a mix of surprise and confusion at his secrecy. "After discussing with your mother, we thought it would be a delightful surprise. I never anticipated it would unfold like this," my father confessed, a tinge of sadness clouding his expression. Before I could delve deeper into the matter, the dressing room door swung open, revealing my mother-in-law's ominous presence. Her saccharine tone sent shivers down my spine as she attempted to coerce me back into the fold. The realization that she must have learned of my father's identity from her husband's revelation sent a chill through me. Who do you think caused all of this? It was just a harmless joke, she declared, her attempt at levity falling flat in the face of my father's unexpected appearance. How dare you make such a tasteless joke at my daughter's expense? It's unforgivable, my father shot back, his indignation mirroring my own. What? So, it wasn't a jest after all? You genuinely called my daughter ugly? My father's confrontational tone left my mother-in-law stumbling for words, her feeble attempts at evasion falling flat. In a flurry of urgency, my husband burst into the room, his hurried footsteps echoing in the tense atmosphere. He knelt before my father, seeking to atone for his mother's transgressions. I apologize for my mother's indiscretion, he implored. You're apologizing to the wrong person. My father's icy gaze bore down on my husband, his words laced with disappointment and reproach. Angela, I'm sorry. My mother acted independently. My husband addressed me, his voice tinged with regret. If that's true, then why didn't you intervene when she insulted me? I demanded, my shock rendering me immobile. And your father attempted to intervene, I added, incredulous. But you seemed content to sit back and watch, I accused, my voice trembling with hurt and betrayal. You're mistaken. My demeanor was misconstrued. Regardless, the sole responsibility lies with my mother, my husband insisted, his defense ringing hollow in the wake of his mother's egregious behavior. My husband erupted, his accusatory finger aimed squarely at his mother. Stephen, are you turning against your own mother? We agreed to teach this insolent wife a lesson together, didn't we? Hey, enough with the unnecessary remarks. You said we needed to put this wife, who refuses to let Mama have her way with the dress, in her place. Keep quiet. My husband silenced his mother, his hand muffling her protests in a somewhat comical fashion. Now, care shed some light on this situation. I prodded, my voice edged with urgency. No, this was my mother's doing alone. It's for your own benefit, frankly. At this point, don't you think? My husband's response faltered as my father interjected, his probing gaze compelling him to speak. When Angela insisted on choosing her wedding dress, my mother suggested she would become disobedient if not disciplined properly. My husband finally confessed, his tone tinged with reluctance. What's wrong with choosing my own dress? Isn't it natural for a wife to heed her mother-in-law's wishes? If you can't even manage that, I feared you might become an obstinate wife who defies her husband in the future. My mother-in-law interjected, her words dripping with disdain. Marriage is a partnership of equals, isn't it? There's no hierarchy. If I can't control you, what's the use of marrying someone on the brink of aging? My husband's admission hung heavy in the air, shattering the illusion of love and commitment. The truth spilled forth. He hadn't chosen me out of affection for who I am, but as a convenient pawn in his game. All his declarations of caring for my mother, of wanting to forge a family together, were they all falsehoods? Of course, you had a tidy sum tucked away, didn't you? I had plans to use that to build a duplex. I envisioned you toiling away like a servant while my mother and I enjoyed our happiness. But now, it's all gone to waste. His words dripped with bitterness, revealing the depths of his deception. Once my husband unleashed his true feelings, there was no reining him in. His desire for control extended to draining our savings, a selfish act that left me reeling in disbelief. His expression shifted from assertive to shocked as he realized the gravity of his words. Wait, no, I didn't mean that. It's over. I can't have a wife who won't spend money or serve me, he stuttered, attempting to backtrack. Stop. I won't tolerate such disrespect, I declared, my resolve firm. I can't marry someone who views me as nothing more than a servant. His composure shattered, my husband paced nervously, grappling with the reality of our crumbling relationship. Then, as if struck by sudden clarity, he proposed a feeble solution. But our wedding is today. We can't call it off now, he reasoned, desperate to salvage the situation. I'll handle the guests and their gifts. Since your mother's actions led to this, you'll cover the expenses, I countered, refusing to shoulder the blame for his family's interference. You can't be serious. This breakup is your fault for overreacting to a single incident with my mom, he retorted, his words dripping with defensiveness. All the hurtful things you've said to me, they're all here, he added, pointing accusingly at me. Retrieving my smartphone from my purse, I pressed play, unleashing a barrage of hurtful words in my mother-in-law's own voice. Poor, ugly, harsh woman. Each insult echoed through the room, a damning testament to her cruelty. When did I record all this? I'm not naive, I declared, my resolve unyielding. I'll be seeking compensation for the emotional distress you've caused. I was merely trying to discipline my daughter-in-law. I've done nothing wrong, my mother-in-law protested weakly. If you won't pay willingly, I'll see you in court. Let's see if you'll repeat those words before a judge. This isn't a laughing matter. Realizing the precariousness of her position, my mother-in-law paled, her defiance crumbling. I'll also be reconsidering your position at the company, I added, turning to address my father-in-law. With this final blow, my husband's facade shattered, his resolve crumbling as he sank to his knees. I'm sorry, Angela. Please forgive me, he pleaded, his voice thick with remorse. That's right, Angela. You're already married. You can't just throw it away so easily. If we work together, we can overcome this obstacle and have a great future together, my husband and mother-in-law pleaded desperately. Shrugging off their attempts at reconciliation, I fixed them with a steely glare. Enough of your deceitful words. You're both despicable, I spat before storming out of the dressing room. Keeping true to my word, I proceeded to dissolve my engagement with Stephen and filed a lawsuit against my mother-in-law for the emotional torment she caused. The financial burden of the failed wedding fell squarely on my ex-husband's shoulders, serving as a harsh reminder of the consequences of his actions. Word of the debacle spread through his workplace, resulting in his ostracization by colleagues. Under my father's directive, he was relocated to a distant branch in Nebraska, effectively demoting him. My ex-mother-in-law faced scorn from her own relatives for sullying their family's reputation with a divorce. Meanwhile, my ex-father-in-law wasted no time in ejecting her from their home. As for me, I redirected my focus to my career, having no desire to entertain the notion of marriage again. Over time, my parents found solace and our family relationships flourished once more with occasional gatherings over dinner. Today, I lead a fulfilling